Well, hello, and welcome again to another episode of Marriage Matters with Ken and Shar. So glad you're in with us. Hon, how you doing?
Every day I say, I'm doing good. And you know what? I am doing good. The Lord's good to me. And I...
Every day.
Yeah, he is. He's just good. He gives us another day to be intentional for his kingdom.
Yep.
I love that.
We got some great stuff to talk about today. I'm really eager to jump right in. We just kind of had a little cup of coffee, little breakfast outside, and we're talking about this particular tool that we're really excited to get in everybody's bag today. We've titled this particular tool, A Crushed Spirit No Man Can Bear. A crushed spirit no man can bear. That's word for word out of the 18th proverb in the 14th verse. It's actually in the ESV version. A crushed spirit no man can bear. It says there that a man can bear up or sustain himself in sickness, physical sickness, but a crushed spirit no man can bear.
That's the worst.
I'm going to throw us back here a little bit, babe. So you chime in here anytime you want. But early on in our marriage, again, I was 19 years old when we married, and we came from two really different families. Charlene came from a strong family of faith.
A sweet family.
It was a real sweet family.
My dad, he could put his foot down, but it was a really sweet, and
there was joy in that home.
There was peace in that home.
Yeah.
So
they loved God. She grew up loving God. I grew up in very much a very common household in our world today. It was shattered by divorce early on when I was 5 or 6 years old, raised by a wonderful mother. My dad, not much in my life younger. We rebuilt that relationship, have a wonderful relationship, friendship now. But through growing up, I think we were raised so differently that I brought the habits of my childhood and the way my family communicated.
It was probably the opposite of how my family communicated.
Yeah. So when it came to resolving conflict or working through stuff or even just talking, we ran into problems really, really fast.
Maybe it was just you, Kenny.
Maybe ran into problems.
Maybe it wasn't your family. I don't mean that bad, but I'm looking at thinking of your family right now, and they're pretty sweet people. So.
They are, but they were loud communicators, right? I mean,
maybe just you.
Even today, I love my brother, and my brother get going, and our hands are moving, and we're loud.
Yeah.
Our voice gets up in the rafters, and some of that is just habit, right?
But just personality.
But some of it is, again, when it comes to resolving conflict within the context of a family. I developed really bad habits and learned early on with Charlene that I had to be really careful of how I communicate because I would literally wound her spirit. It would happen all the time. I could tell when it was happening. The evidence of it was clear. She would shrink away from a conversation, and the louder I got to make my point, the quieter she got. She just couldn't stay often in the conversation. Because I was so overwhelming, whether it was hand gestures or the rolling of my eyes, or I would sit on the edge of a chair and get bigger than her when I needed to make my point.
Well, I like to resolve conflict. I do that, but I don't want to do it in a fight. And I don't like confrontation.
Right. And I didn't mind confrontation.
Aggressive. No, you didn't mind it at all. And you didn't feel that it was out of the ordinary or that I shouldn't be able to hang with you. But my personality, I wasn't comfortable with that at all. And I could not bear it. I could not bear it.
Yeah. I used to wonder, come on, fight with me. Let's go. It's like, we can work this out, and she just would shrink away. I mean, literally become smaller in her chair ultimately, I look back now and I felt like, without intending to, that I was a bully, really.
No, you were.
Yeah.
And
no
now I didn't say that.
Question there.
I didn't say that because I didn't want to hurt his feelings, because I don't like to hurt people's feelings, but I would say nothing because the things I was feeling was not real pretty, and I wanted to lash out, but I just couldn't.
That just wasn't her way.
No, it wasn't my way.
So
not that I didn't have the feelings, though.
True. I bet.
I wasn't a zombie there.
So in our mind, this is a big tool. Every couple we've ever worked with or talked to, struggles with this. They what we call, they crush, or other translations have the word wound, a broken spirit. I think that is the New American Standard Version. Wounded is there. It actually, the word means smitten.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it comes from the 18th proverb, the 14th verse. A spirit of a man will sustain him in sickness, but who can bear a broken spirit? That tells us a lot. We're going to deal with one point of that in this episode, point 2 in the following episode. Point 1 is realizing and recognizing, and this isn't just even only in the context of marriage, right, hon? I mean, we
this
talked
is
about
life.
that.
This is in relationships completely.
Absolutely. Every relationship in our life.
Every relationship.
But for the sake of this podcast, we're talking specifically about God's way in marriage. And
I do want to interject one thing. I probably interrupted you, but human relationships have this problem.
True.
But the Lord never would give us a wounded spirit.
No.
I was just thinking of that. When he deals with us, he's never condemning. We sometimes take it as condemning, or we feel condemned by him. That's never his spirit. That's never the way he communicates with us. And when he does, and he allows things in our lives that even he chastens us, it's still because he just loves us so much.
Yeah, it's not harsh. But
in human relationships, we're going to have wounded spirits.
Yeah. Well, the word says to speak the truth in love. I mean, that's the command. And that's the way that Jesus always was.
Right.
And the way his word is, it speaks truth to our soul, but it's always in the love of his redeeming grace. Right.
It's the redemption.
Couches that conviction. Right.
Sorry, I can't interrupt.
That's okay. No, I'm going to read just a few verses just to get the feel. The 18th proverb is what the Lord gave us, really, this tool. The learning to refrain from wounding one another's spirit. It came to us through the 18th proverb, and it's what, 24 verses long, at least 12 of them, half or maybe more of the entire proverb is made up of wisdom concerning how we communicate. It's really a proverb about communication. Let me tell you what I mean. Let me just read a couple of these. In the second verse, a fool has no delight. This slayed me at one point in time. A fool has no delight in understanding, but only in expressing his own heart.
In marriage, that is that is what we do.
That's me. I mean, the more I need to make my point in my head, I know that I'm thinking, I don't really care to understand you, but by golly, you're going to understand me. You're going to feel this, right? And listen to it again. A fool has no delight in understanding, but only in expressing his own heart. This is a tragedy in any relationship where they're not listening to you. They're only listening enough to formulate their next verbal assault or comeback or
getting ammunition.
Right. That's all. They're arming themselves. They're not. This is so important for married couples. You need to understand each other, and you need to strive. We all do, to strive to understand our spouse's heart. And I didn't. To me, what was important was her understanding me.
Well, and I think on the same point, even though I wasn't speaking much, I wanted you to understand me and what this verbal confrontation is doing to me.
Right.
So it wasn't to try to even listen to what you wanted to communicate, because I couldn't hear it anymore.
Right. Listen to a couple more. Verse 4, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters, and they're the wellspring of wisdom is a flowing brook. Verse 6, this is great too. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calls for blows. We can actually, with our words, accelerate, and it's like throwing gasoline on a fire. We can create a defensiveness in our own spouse that wasn't there. My words or hers can challenge me in the way they're spoken and what is spoken in a way that almost forces a defensive posture.
Well, and I think that those of you that are listening right now, and as I'm listening to you, I totally realize that. You can think of instances, I can think of instances right now that words escalate the issue. No one has to touch anyone else.
Right.
No one has to get up in anyone's face. It's just that what comes out of our mouth can ignite a huge firestorm. It's huge.
A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calls for blows. Next verse, verse 7. A fool's mouth is his own destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. It goes on and on. The 13th verse, he who answers, this is another one that is such a wellspring of wisdom. It's unbelievable. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it's folly and a shame to him. Oh, dude, did I do this all the time?
What, call interrupting? Or telling someone, now I was guilty of this, telling someone what they just said or what they're meaning in the conversation. Like, no, you said this. No, I didn't. No, yes, what you said. That's what I heard.
No, you would say, this is what you meant.
Yes, this is what you meant.
No, if I'd have meant that, I'd have said it, honey. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it's a folly and a shame. It means we're not listening. We're just running at the mouth, and it's a fool who does that, right? Who doesn't hear the whole matter. Let your spouse get their whole message out and the whole communication. We're terrible at this stuff. At least I can only speak for myself.
Right.
I'm terrible
at this stuff. We're going to only speak for what we've learned and what we've been through, and some other people that we've tried to help too. We can speak. This is a common thing.
Yep.
Very common.
The first one to plead his case, verse 17, the first one to plead his case seems right until his neighbor comes and examines it. How many times did I sit with couples, or I would see maybe a wife first or the husband first, and they would share the problems they have. And I would form an immediately, I'm going to admit this on air, I would form an attitude towards their spouse. I hadn't even met him yet.
Right.
But the one story, and I didn't, dude, I haven't even met the guy or the gal, and I don't like them, right? Only to find when they come in, they have a whole different side of the story.
Perspective.
Right? You bet.
I remember when we started, sometimes we have to see couples that I see the wife and Kenny sees the husband, and then we compare notes afterwards. And then Kenny and I were getting into confrontation over...
Because we only heard one
side. So we say, no, she feels this. Well, no, he will. And when she does that, he did. And I went, we're starting to get in a confrontation over someone else's issues. Yep. This is really not good. We've got to get this under control here. So this verse is perfect for that. Yeah. I think it's perfect.
All through, by the way, that's a great verse for you parents. Listen up, right? That one child that comes and gives you the story, their sibling probably has a whole nother angle.
Oh, yes. Or their teacher.
Or
their friend at school.
So the 18th proverb, what we're hoping to do is get it as a lens over your eyes. Even though it's applicable to every relationship in your life, we really want to hone in on marriage, the danger of wounding a spouse's spirit. One of the most powerful verses in the whole proverb comes in verse 21. It's familiar to many of us. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Man, what a powerful truth that is, to understand that my words, and I learned this young, within the first 20 seconds or 30 seconds of walking in my front door after a day's work, when we were married young, right, before children, I could have Charlene puddled up in a pool of tears without ever touching her at all, just with my words. Or I could have her feeling like she's the queen of the world in about 30 seconds with just my words. The power of death and life are in the tongue. So that's what we're talking about. This is just basic communication stuff, right? Stuff that every couple needs to always be getting better at, be intentional about. So hopefully this tool is going to help
this. And this wasn't written just for marriage in Proverbs.
No.
But sometimes I look at the scriptures and I think, oh, that's how I should be treating my fellow man,
your neighbor,
my neighbor, my coworkers, my friends, the common people that I don't even know at the grocery store. But yet it's really, it applies to your spouse also.
Why are we so slow to apply truths like this to that most important of all relationships, the one we're one flesh with?
I think it's the enemy, and he just doesn't want us to apply these truths to that and treat our spouse with kindness and graciousness, and because we're so comfortable with them, we think, oh, that'll just no big deal. This is the way we do it.
We tend to read that 21st verse, death and life are in the power of the tongue towards your fellow man, or towards your neighbor, or again, towards your work colleague.
But
we don't read it like this. Death and life are in the power of the tongue towards my spouse, right? Isn't that weird?
And we need to.
Yep.
Because this is the relationship that we spend the most time with and is the most critical and important relationship besides our relationship with Christ.
Right. Okay, so here we go. Let's track with me. Let's work our way down here. The other great truth besides that 21st verse comes in verse 14. The spirit of a man, here's the point of it, sustains him in sickness, but who can bear a broken spirit? That tells us there's two big realities wrapped up into that. Number one, we'll talk about it right now, is we've got to realize, every married person has to realize, I have the power to wound or break or smite or cause suffering within my spouse's spirit. That's point one. We've got to understand that the way I speak, the way I communicate, has the potential to, in the inside, wound her spirit and she mine. Okay? Look, you break my leg, I can put a cast on it and get over it, but continually wounding my spirit and breaking my spirit or crushing it. I think the ESV has the word crush.
Yeah, I think of a little can of crushed tomatoes compared to a whole tomato. It looks a lot different. It's crushed.
And then the second point, not only is this truth that I have the capacity to do that to her, but number two, that there's a human limit to what the heart can take, what the spirit can take. We tend to want to think that, in fact, I've heard it in my office with couples. Well, he just knows I'm that way, or she just knows I'm like that.
They just need to accept me for the way I am.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I call that the Popeye statement. I am what I am, and that's all what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, right? You know. But this makes it real clear that they can't do that. There's a limit to how much everyone's spouse can endure. And I got to be honest, early in our marriage, I was pushing those limits to where, not in anger necessarily, sometimes in frustration or anger, my voice would raise. I would puff myself up and browbeat and had a tendency to resolve conflict that way. And again, I think I learned that young. It was a way of life in our household. You just got louder than the other guy and made your point. I think probably bullying your way through life is common to a lot of people. And then I married a girl who didn't fight. Her culture wasn't that way. And it was just absolutely overwhelming. When we would have conflict, I would overwhelm her so fast, and her spirit would become wounded because of my words and the way I was communicating. And she would just shrink to nothing.
I would say, Kenny, you don't have to yell at me. And he goes, I'll never forget. He would say, you think this is yelling? I can show you yelling.
You've never heard me yell.
You've never really heard me yell. And I went, oh, wow. This is like yelling to me.
Yeah.
And it was funny. We just couldn't get past that point of the way that we both communicated in conflict.
Even as you're saying that, babe, I can tell right now that everybody listening to this has had that conversation. Somebody has said, no, I'm not yelling. I can really yell.
Or both, they're really both yelling.
Or they're really yelling.
Some people aren't afraid to get into it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So a couple of the verses, let's set this up for the next episode. Again, the main point here is this depth of understanding, comprehending that according to the word of the Lord here, that we can wound our spouse's spirit. We got to understand, gang, that you have the power to do that, and you've probably done it, right?
We can't pretend we don't know anymore.
Now, the way this happens, again, same proverb, verse 8 says, the words of a talebearer are like tasty trifles. They go down, get this, words go downward into the inmost body. I think one of them, I think it's the New American Standard, has the inmost part of the belly, or that might be the Authorized, the King James Version, the inmost part of the belly. Isn't that interesting? What that tells us is that my words, whether it's gossipy or anger or whatever language, words aren't processed only through the human ear and in the mind. Think of a child harsh words from a parent, they're not processed. The child doesn't just go, oh, dad had a bad day at work, or, that doesn't matter that he called me stupid. He didn't really mean that. Those words, that language is processed in the inmost part. That's the soul. Right. In the Hebrew poetry, which this was written in, the belly was the seating place. They viewed the belly as the seating place of the more powerful human emotions, lust, anger, fear, envy, that flowed out of the belly. Even now, when you would know this, when men, particularly when we get angry and rage begins to rise up from where? Our belly. And it begins to, the old cartoon, blow right out our ears, but they saw the belly as that seating place. So what this is telling us in verse 8 of this proverb is that the words that I use, they're not processed just in the mind and filtered out there.
So sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah, that's a lie straight out of hell. That's that's a big fat lie,
it's like
man.
Sticks and stones. Yeah, they'll break your bones, but words will kill you.
Yeah. This is what the word says, right? So these things are processed in the soul, in the inside of a man. And the words that I use with Charlene or she with me, they're not just processed in the mind. So this is how we get wounded. Now, real quick, just to set up the next episode where we talk about what happens and the mechanics of this, the same proverb goes on to say that a brother, when they are offended this way, is stronger, get this, is stronger to win than a fortress city. They can't take it anymore. And their contentions become like the bars of a castle. We're smiling at each other across the table.
We have experienced that.
Because I have been guilty, again, of communicating in a way that is crushing or wounding her spirit, harsh words, loud, the volume of my voice. And you may do it, other people may do it differently, but we get our way, right? And up come these bars of a castle.
And then I would have my way.
Yeah, she'd shut me out. And that's not a place that a married couple who should be in unity want to be. I'm outside looking in at that point going, honey, please let me back in.
It's like, no way, Jose.
But their contentions are like the bars of a castle. Might as well try to take LA by force, man.
You're going to have to win this one back.
Yeah. So there it is. We're setting this up for the next episode, and we're so glad you listened in. Let me recap real quick, okay? This proverb is huge. It's all about communication, and it warns us that the very power of death and life are in my tongue. So it's all about communication. Those words that we use, how we communicate with our spouses, aren't processed only in their mind. They can't filter that out logically and go, oh, they're just in a bad mood, or, it affects their inside, and it's going to affect the way they view you, their attitude towards you, their attitude towards life will be affected that way. And more than anything, there's a limit. Again, verse 14, who can bear up under a crushed spirit? Nobody. This is telling us, I've had to explain this to couples in my office. If you keep doing that, that person will no longer be willing to live with you. They cannot. They can't endure any more bullying, any more harsh language. You have wounded their spirit that bad, right? So we've seen this become a real problem. And quite frankly, early on in our marriage, because of my lack of ability to communicate any other way, I really tended to lean towards bullying to get my way, make sure she understood my point. She's much less like that, but it was affecting us early on. Wouldn't you say, babe?
Yes, I didn't understand it because I don't have those same feelings as he does. And one time I asked him, I go, how would you ever have enough courage to fight someone, And he goes, you don't understand what's going on inside of me. I can't do anything but that. And see, I don't feel that way. I don't react to things that way. I would run and cry, and Kenny would stand and fight. And that's just different personalities. And we had to realize that about each other, that I can't bear certain things. And I'm sure you'd have your limit too.
Yeah.
But
everyone does. That's what this is telling us. Everyone's got a limit.
And your limit would be maybe different than the thing that would crush your spirit would be different than what would crush mine.
And I think it would be a mistake on our part to assume that this is a man-woman thing.
Right.
Men
Yes,
communicate louder, communicate, and women. Look, I've met many of women in my office that can light you up. No,
they're not scared like me.
Not scared.
They're not. Don't go there, man.
So this is not a man-woman thing.
No, it's not.
This is
personality thing more than anything.
And we need to be real intentional about now today. I can honestly say we've been married 46 years, and when we are in a tight spot and we're communicating and you can feel the emotions ratcheting up, I get quieter now.
He does, but I can still see the things going on in his brain. Like, I am really getting angry.
I want
to
throw something so bad.
But he's using self-control, that one of the fruit of the Spirit.
Well, I don't want to wound her spirit.
Right. And he doesn't want to be ungodly. Right. And you have to exercise those things. And that comes after many, many years of giving that area to the Lord and seeing the Holy Spirit work in our own lives. And that's why he gives us, that's why we have the Holy Spirit. Right. Because alone we can't change us. We can't change our personality. That particular fruit of the Spirit is called self-control. Yes, it is.
All right. So next episode, we'll talk about just how that closes a spirit, what bars of a castle look like, and continuing this discussion. So we are so glad that you checked in with us today, and we're excited to finish up part 2 along this same discussion.
Yes, if it's not helping your marriage, it sure is mine. I like to go over these concepts a lot, because I know that I'm just human, and I can slip back into behaviors of the flesh. And
after 46,
this is good for me.
After 46 years, we're living it out just like everybody else.
I love doing marriage ministry because it keeps me in check.
Amen.
And that's what it should do for all of us.
And we're so glad that you listened in. So God bless you. Remember every day that your marriage really does matter. Until next time.
Bye-bye.